Hi guys, good morning and welcome back to Crafty Quilting Designs. So today is upload 6 and it's the final one for our Christmas quilt. Our quilt is called Happy Christmas. There will be a pattern in the description box down below for you to click and have a link to for those of you who haven't started this yet or late in joining for whatever reason. It's going to be there. I will also put a playlist together with in the description box and also at the top, so the corner there, the corner there, the corner there, the corner there, so that it's easier for you to find it. Now it's a beautiful quilt. It's very large. My apologies for not putting it up on Friday. I was actually still quilting it, to be honest. I came up from work and I got straight into it. It does take some time putting it together. That's really the only sort of knick-knack part to it. But it's absolutely beautiful. You are going to love it. Now you will see some pictures at the end, so stay tuned for that, which I've spent some time taking some really nice pictures of it. Next week I would like us to have a Christmas gift sew along, so we can do that as well, so that we have all of our Christmas stuff together. So I've just been thinking and planning ahead of what we're going to do. So next week we can start a Christmas gift idea collection so we can give to families, etc. That is handmade, and handmade products are absolutely gorgeous, as we all know. So let me take you through now how to make the quilt. I'm not going to show it to you because literally you're going to see it now. So you're going to see what the whole quilt looks like, and then the video will tell you how to compile it together. All of the sashings and sizes, everything is going to be in the description box, and all of the details, etc. So I have shown you how to measure to do for your backing and your inner sashings as well. So you have those there for you to do for your own quilt, because it may not necessarily measure up to mine. So I've showed you how to measure to buy the correct amount of yardage, but I also given you the yardage that I have used, so that way if yours is at the same size of mine, then it's easier. All right, but you still have the knowledge of how to measure for sashings and borders, etc. So happy quilting, guys, and let's go and see what it looks like. Okay guys, so here is the quilt. It looks absolutely beautiful. This quilt measures 80 in width by 100 in length. As you can see, I have actually tucked mine under the pillows. Now I did contemplate actually making some pillows for them, but at the end of the day I realized we really didn't need it because the quilt is so long, and you could tuck it under your pillows. But it looks beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. There is no stresses at all in actually putting the quilt together. The only issue was the quilting. The quilting did take some time because the quilt is very large. If you're taking yours to a long arm, then hey, you saved yourself a job. Because telling you from experience, it did take some time, and I only did swirls with little designs in certain blocks, but it wasn't all over pattern, which is what I call a quick turnaround pattern. And with something this large, you need something really simplistic, but that works as well for the quilting. So I started with I should say I ended with the present blocks at the bottom. And you can use yours in whatever layout you want. You can switch, turn them around however you want. Different, you don't have to lay out the way I have laid mine out, but I like this one. I did enjoy doing it this way. And if you notice, I put the stars in the middle. Okay, and then obviously we've got 7 rows all together, so hence the reason why I put the stars in the middle. But let's go through the quilting itself closely. So as you can see, I did the trees, and I did one of the medium houses in the middle, and you can see my clouds there at the top. So I really wanted to have that standing out. I did use white on white for my sashings and inner borders. And for the quilting, I just did some squiggly lines on them. But I did do the swirl meanders in the background, just as the balance of the quilt in terms of all the sashings. Moving down to the bubbles, and you can see it's a bit tucked underneath there because, as I said, the quilt is quite long, but they came next in the formation of the layout. And then came the Christmas lane, and I love the Christmas lane. Very, very nice. So the balance of the houses came in the Christmas lane, or went in the Christmas lane. And of course we have the stars next, and if you notice, I used all of the same color for the background, so no white sashings went into this one. I simply used the same colors as the squares for the background of the Christmas stars, and I did that intentionally. I also placed the houses intentionally as well in this particular row because the colors sort of, you know, immersed together, especially with the dark blues. So hopefully you can see my sort of thought process with putting the houses very close to the stars. The next lane was the stockings. Okay, and of course our snowballs. And with the snowballs and the baubles, I did some feathers in the circular shape, and hopefully you can make that out there. And of course we ended with the present block. The quilt is really beautiful. I must admit I was impressed with how lovely it came about. Well, I shouldn't really because, you know, I planned it all in my head, so it came out the way I expected it. For the border there, on the inner border, I think it was a 3-inch border, I did just some wishbones, just to tie it all together. And on the final border, I just did zigzags. So really, it really came together really nicely. Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful quilt. Really long, really big, so it's bound to fit on your bed. Again, you can move the rows about. No quilt blocks was left out. I used all of the quilt blocks in the quilt that we made. Initially I was thinking probably I can leave a couple of blocks out and make some pillow cushions with them, but in the end I decided was to put everyone in, and I am glad with the decision. So it's up to you. You will see where I've left some out in the first sort of formation of how to put the blocks together, and then in the second one I did show you how this is the one I actually went with. So you can decide if you wanted to leave some blocks out and make cushions, or you wanted to use all of it. But I'm glad I stuck to all of it. It is so beautiful, guys. I so love it. So love it. I am hoping that you will send me all of yours. I would love to put a compilation together of all the quilts and show everybody on YouTube how brilliantly we are. So guys, let me take you through now how to put this together, and stay tuned for the end, and I will show you some more pictures of the quilt. Okay, and hopefully in my bedroom you can actually see it nice and bright, and but I'll show you some more pictures as well, so hopefully it can come through really clearly to you of what I actually did. So yeah, so let's get started on that. Alright guys, so let me take you through the sashings for the quilt. Alright, so I'm going to tell you the sizes as well as the number that you require for each of the blocks. So the sashings, I've laid them out in the order of which you need them. So for example, row 1 in the quilt top is your trees, row 2 is your baubles, row 3 is your Christmas lane or your houses, whatever you refer to them as. Row 4 are your stars, row 5 are the stockings, and row 6 is the snowballs. Okay, so for row 1, which is the tree row, we need 3 inches by 11.5. Okay, and you need 5 of those. For the baubles, we need 6 inches in width by 13 in length, and we need 3 of those. For row 3, which is your Christmas lane, we need 5 inches in width by 11.5, and you need 3 of those. For your stars, you need 5.5 inches in width by 15 in length, and you need 4. For row 5 is for your stockings, and you need 3 inches by 11.5. Okay. For your snowball, which is your final row, you need 5 inches in width by 13.5, and again you need 3. Okay, I will put all of these in the description box down below. All right, now what I have done when I was cutting out my sashings, I did the tree and the stockings together because they are the same size sashings. So to do this, I did a strip of my background fabric, okay, and then I cut it to the length. Again, remember to cut opposite your selvage so that you're cutting on the correct grain. Okay, so do the length of the strip, the length of the strip, and then you cut the width as you go. So for the tree and the stocking, I did those together. So I had one long strip, and then I just cut it into 3 inches. Because I already cut 11.5 in the length of that strip. All right, and I did the same for the baubles, the Christmas lane, and the stars, as well as the snowballs. Now I'm sure you've noticed that my stars sashings are very much similar to what I made the background fabric for the stars, and I just wanted to create that same illusion of the stars just floating in the middle of the quilt top. All right, so that's what I've done, but I've just used the same for those. Okay, now where necessary, I did trim to make up my my sashings. So for example, this one here, there I did just some cuts in it to actually make up the length of it, because obviously I'd run out by this particular time and I didn't really want to go buy any more fabric. I just thought I will trim it down, whatever trimmings I had, to make up the length, which is the 15 inches in length. Okay, so that's what I did for that. So now what we're going to do now is just simply, I'll show you the layout of how it looks without the sashings, and then I will fit the sashings in, so then that way you know how it actually looks, and then we will stitch it together, and then we will talk about the borders, etc., as well as the inner borders. So when I'm referring to the inner borders, I'm referring to the line or the horizontal line of fabric that joins each row together. All right, so get yourself organized with that, and then let's move on to showing you how the layout of the blocks look like. Okay guys, so this is the layout that I have worked out for us to do. Now you can change the layout about however you're happy with, but this is the one I have elected to go with. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what I have done. So for the first row, which is the tree row that I referred to, I've mixed that in with a present block and I've alternated them, and you can do that with yours. For the second row, we have the baubles block, and again you can rearrange them in whatever particular order on that horizontal line. For the houses or Christmas lane, I have elected to stitch a few of them together to make sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks entirely. So for the first one here, I have stitched together the tall, small and medium. On this one here, I've stitched together a tall and a small, and there a medium and a small, and I've left a medium individually on its own. For the star row, I left the white in the middle for obvious reasons, because obviously we've got 2 red. And for our stockings, I placed all of the blocks for the stockings within the quilt top, and again you can see your last row there, which is your snowball block. So that is the quilt top there. Okay, now I'm going to add in all of the sashings and then show you what that looks like. We are also going to fill in the rows with a 2.5-inch sashing so that each row is separated. But I will get the quilt top stitched together and then I will show you what it looks like. So let's move on to that now. Alright guys, so I just wanted to share some sewing with you. I have done blocks, trees and bubbles, Christmas stars, and now I'm on to the stocking block. Okay, so I've taken up my blocks. This is the first block, okay, and obviously the rest is in order, so make sure you have your first block with you at the front. Okay, if you wanted to turn it over and then start your way from the back, that's entirely down to you, but I'm working from the front. Okay, and I have my sashings here for my stockings, and obviously I just removed my label because I know these are the correct ones. Okay, so I'm going to put those aside and just move these so I don't pick them up for any weird reason. So again, and I'm going to sew them. I'm going to put these to the side so I don't just reach any side, because these are the end, and I'm going to bring this here and then turn my sashings front sides together. I'm just checking that it's the right front. Okay, front sides together, and I'm going to sew. Now I'm going to sew, and this is the main reason why I switched on, because while I'm sewing, obviously I notice little things that pop up. So when you're sewing, make sure your block is down on the machine. Okay, so block size down. So I'm going to get it like this, make sure I line it up point to point, and then make sure the block goes down on the feed dogs. So realistically you should be looking at the pretty side of the block because you are sewing the sashing on top of the block. All right, so the sashing's on top and the block is down. Now the reason for this, in case you're wondering, obviously a lot of these are under bias. They're stretched, we've cut them, we've stitched them together, so all of these are under bias, so they're a little bit giving them. Okay, so sometimes, and what I've noticed is that the blocks may seem a little bit stretched, and I'm sure I've said this before, you know, so just put the block on the feed dog so that way it brings everything in together equally, so then there's no issues. All right, so again, line it all up and you just do your front sides together and then you sew. And what I tend to do, as you know, is once I have actually started at the top, I will anchor my stitches and then put my ends together and hold it and then sew, so that the blocks doesn't move. And just keep to your 1/4 inches normal. And literally just take your time. Okay, there's no matching of seams, so it's quite easy to do. And as you can see, the block is actually upside down because this is the actual side I'm supposed to sew on. So I'm going to turn it back the right way around so that I can see, and I'm going to get my other block now and then attach it to the sashing, line it up, and this time I can just simply take the block and put it on the feed dog. So that, again, at this time now I am looking at the wrong side of my first block. Line it up and again sew. So as I was saying, there is no seams to match up. It's quite easy, happy sewing. Just pay attention to what you're doing and how you're lining up your blocks, and in that way you shouldn't have to end up unpicking anything. Okay, so that's done. You take it off, again open it up, and all I'm doing literally is just finger pressing, and it's entirely down to you. But if I turn the block over, you can see that the seams wants to go that way, which is towards the sashing, which is fine. And the reason for that is because we've got this horizontal seam here, so it's pushing it that way. but just finger press it so it lays nice and flat, and then everything should be okay. So I'm going to turn it back round and just finger press there again so that it's flat, and I'm going to turn it the right way round so that way I do not get myself confused. And what I have been doing is just folding the block so I don't have too much bulk underneath or within the throat space of the sewing machine. And again, I take my sashing, find my right side, put it down, and then start sewing. So no fuss sewing at all. And again, this time I'm going to take it and I am looking at the wrong side of the block and sew. And that's simply it. And that's it. Again, finger press it, and again it is simply pushing the that new seam because of that horizontal seam there. All right, and that's it. Again, fold it down so you don't have too much bulk, and then you literally get the other one, add on, turn it over, and then that's it. So continue doing that with all of the blocks. Then we shall lay them all out and I'll give you a look and see what it looks like. Again, so as I was saying, with this one here, I can see that there is a little bit of a shortage there, and that's only because of how this block is made. So I'm just going to align it there and there, and I don't even have to stretch it because there is that automatic bias there, and it's actually going to fit in no problem. So if you experience that, which I expect you to, that's all you need to do is just literally line it up, and hence the reason why I say I do an anchor stitch at the top. Okay, and what I mean by that is that I allow 2 or 3 stitches and then I align it and then continue to sew my 1/4 inch. There you go, my anchor stitch. I am now getting it together there, and I am going to simply sew and align it. Now I haven't put the block down, but I'm definitely making sure that I've held those 2 pieces of fabrics together. I'm just adjusting the seams there so it's nice and flat. Because if I'm sewing from the side where I can see the block, I can actually see if the 1/4 inch guide foot is actually pushing that particular seam in the wrong way, so I can stop, adjust it, and make sure it lays flat. Alright, so let's look at this now, and that's it. Again, just flatten that, and I'm not dragging it hard, I'm just pressing it down, to be honest. Fold it again, go to another one, find my right side and wrong side. That's my right side. I put it down and I continue to sew. Alright, so I'm going to continue doing that, and then I shall show you all of the rows together without the sashings. Alright guys, so I've laid all the rows out in the manner of which I expect to sew it together. Now you can do this. Now if you notice from originally I had the presents and the Christmas trees mixed together. I've changed the blocks around. So now we have 1, 2, 3 with the stars in the middle, 4, 5, 6 and 7 rows all together. So the quilt is growing. All right, so you can lay yours out however you want once you stitch all of the background fabric on together, and you can move it around, but I thought this layout worked really nicely. So the presents is at the bottom, followed by the snowballs, and you can see all of the background fabric is mixed in there, so it all lays out nicely. The quilt top is not stitched together as yet. I've just laid them out as I intend to complete the whole quilt top. And then you have your Christmas lane, and of course the boo balls and the Christmas trees at the top. So the next stage now is to add a 2-inch border around, and then our final border for the quilt top. So let's move on to that now, and then hopefully I'll show you the completed look. Alright guys, so it's time to add on the borders. I have stitched all of the rows together, and I've measured my quilt top. So I thought I'll show you how to work out the number of borders that you actually need for your quilt. Okay, so once you've stitched all of the rows together and you've ironed your quilt top, you need to iron it nice and flat and then lay it on a really flat surface. So I've put mine back into the spare room, and I've laid it out really flat. And you need to measure more or less. You don't have to go right in the middle, but you go as close by as possible, not to the edge, but at least a little way up. So let's say this is the edge here. Let's say this is the edge of your quilt top. Just measure somewhere around there for the length, and for the width you move up as well, so roughly where the ruler is. Okay, the meaning for that is so that sometimes the edges are a little bit biased and they're a bit stretchy. So sometimes if you measure the edge of the quilt top, it's an inaccurate measurement. All right, so we need it to be nice in the middle where the quilt top is nice and flat and it's not stretchy at the end there. All right, okay, so my quilt top, now I don't know what yours is going to work out as, but it should come in somewhere close as possible. Okay, so my quilt top measures 65 width by 85 in length. So I have my calculator here. All right, so we need 65, which is the width, plus 65 because we have the top and the bottom, okay, plus 85, which is the length on one side, plus 85 length on the other side. That gives me 300. Okay, so that's telling me I need 300 to go all the way around the actual square, or the rectangle in this particular case, of the quilt top. Now we need to drill that down. So our fabric is 44 inches. Well, normal width of fabric is 44. So I'm going to divide it by 40. Just because 40 is easier. You can use 44 to get a pinpoint measurement if you want to, but I'm just going to go for 40 for an equated response from the calculator. So if I put equal now, then it's give me 7.5. So that's telling me I need 7.5 strips. Now remember, I didn't use 44, I just did 40. So I'm going to round this off to 8 strips in total. So I'm going to cut 8 strips, and the width of those strips is 3 inches. Now the amount of yardage we're going to be using will be more than enough, which I'll tell you later on what yardage you need for your backing and your sashings and your border. So don't worry about that. I will tell you at the beginning, and as I said, I'll put everything in the description box down below. So I've already cut a 3-inch strip here. Okay, so I'm going to continue. So I need 8 in total. So the calculator says to me I need 7.5 strips. So rather than cut 7.5, I'm going to cut 8 because I already rounded it off to 40. Okay, when the width of my fabric, or my yardage fabric here, is 44. All right, so again I'll go through that again just to ensure that you understand what I'm saying. So measure your quilt top. My quilt top measures 65, okay, in width, and I'm going to do that twice for the top and bottom, so plus 65, okay, and then I'm going to plus my 85 in length, so plus 85 on one side, plus 85 on the other side. Again, that's 300 all the way around. Okay, divide that down by 40, which is the width of fabric, and I press equal. It tells me 7.5. Okay, so I need 7.5 strips, and I'm going to round it off to 8. Okay, so I'm going to cut 8 strips at 3 inches wide. So I've done one here already. So this is my width of fabric, as you can see. So it's 44 inches in length. So I need 8 of these. Then I'm going to join them front sides together using a 1/4 inch seam, and I'll have a very long length of border and I'm going to stitch it on to the quilt top. Now when you're stitching your border on, do not stretch the quilt top, all right? Just take your time, let the feed dogs do the work. Now once you've added this and you're adding your final border, which is going to be 5 inches, then you need to do the same. So again, you will measure your quilt top the same way again, and then divide it down by the width of fabric, which is going to be 40 in my case, and it will give you the same response, and it will tell you then how much yardage you actually need for your border. But of course I'll come back and show you that again. All right, I may change the size of the final border to 6 inches. I'm a little bit unsure about that, but I will see once I've done, because I work very much visual. So once I see what it looks like with the 3-inch border, I'll measure it, because right now the quilt is really growing, guys. It's a big quilt. So let's finish up this for the 3-inch borders for the 8 strips, and then we will move on to the final one. Okay guys, so let's move on to the second border now. Okay, so I have measured my quilt top yet again. Remember, our first measurement was 65 width and 85 length, and I explained to you about adding on the 3 inches on each side. Now since I've added on the 3 inches, my width has now become 70 and my length has now become 90. Now we need to do the same thing yet again in order to find out how much of the final border I'm going to add on. Now the final border is going to be 5 inches, because I wasn't too sure as to whether or not I should do 5 inches or 6 inches. Okay, 5 inches is what we're going with. All right, so I'm going to total how much fabric now I need to go all the way around. So I'm going to do 70 plus 70, because that's for the top and the bottom, plus 90 plus 90, and that's for both sides. So that gives me a total of 320. That tells me I need 320 strips of length of fabric in order to go all the way around to sew onto my quilt top. Okay, now in order to find out how much strips I need to divide that by 40, and 40 is the width of fabric. Okay, now this particular one, which is the holly print on red, it is actually 40, so I know I am actually on the mark with this one. Okay, so there's no error for making any mistake cuts. So I am now going to divide by 40. That tells me I need 8 strips. Okay, so at first we had 300 inches of fabric to go all the way around, and that really isn't realistic to just simply cut that. Okay, so now after we've divided by 40, the calculator says I need 8 strips in order to know exactly how much I need to go around. So it's a lot more simplistic. Now, in order for me to know how much fabric I need, because I've decided that I want to use my 5-inch, I want to cut my border into 5 inches, I'm going to times that by 8, which is the amount of strips I need. That gives me 40. So that tells me I need 40 inches of fabric, okay, which is 1 yard. So I need 1 yard, okay, of fabric in order to give me 8 strips. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Now this is something you can use for any quilt top, not just this one in particular. It's for any quilt top that will enable you to measure your quilt so that you know exactly how much fabric you need and how much strips you need. Now when we did the first one, I didn't tell you how to work out for the quantity or the amount of fabric you needed, because I know then that I had extra. Okay, and I've done that for us. We have extra in case, you know, there's a mistake made. However, with this particular one, I did sort of average it exactly. All right, so this is actually 1 yard of fabric here for the red, and I'm going to cut this in 5 inches width at 8 inches in total strips. So let's go do that now. So I've already cut one there. I'm just going to take this aside, and my fabric is folded salvage to salvage, sorry. Okay, so both is there. All right, and at the end here, my fold of fabric is nice and flat. There is no creases, it's not twisted or anything like that. So all I'm going to do now is just make sure that the fabric is on the board properly, and I'm lining up the edge, just folded edge here on the last line on my cutting mat, and that's just to ensure that my cuts are going to be lovely and straight. All right, so I'm going to take my first strip away because I know that's already 5 inches. I'm going to glide it down so I know I have enough room, and I am going to use my 6-inch ruler. Okay, so 6 inches in width, and I'm going to put it on 1 inch less so that I am cutting 5 inches, and just simply cut the balance of my 7 strips, and that's simply it. And once we've done that, then we need to join them all together. So that's 2, 3, 4. I'm just gonna move this down a bit so I have space. 5. And remember, when you're cutting, make sure you use your body weight so that you cut nice and straight and that ruler doesn't move. Now, if you don't want to order the fabric as closely as I did, you can give yourself a little bit extra. That is fine, but I think for cutting 5 inches, shouldn't really make any error, really. You should be okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and let's see if my calculations was actually correct. And look at that, absolutely spot on, 8. Okay, so that's simply it. So no wastage at all, no buying extra fabric. We've simply used all of the 1 yard for final border. All right, so all you need to do now is to sew these front sides together. Now, do not do a bias binding for this, because you will then lose you would then lose for your seam allowance. Okay, so just do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that should take you all the way around. So 1/4 inch seam allowance to join all the fabrics together, and you're good to go. Okay, so there you go. Let's go do that now and get it finally on the border. Now remember, once you have done all the strips, let me just bring in my quilt top here, and all you need to do is lay the quilt top as flat as possible and lay your strip down and measure it to the length, and then cut it and then stitch it on. So you're measuring the whole thing. Okay, once you've done all the strips, sewn all strips together, you're going to lay it front side. So don't do it at the end, as I said previously. Just bring it some way, not directly in the middle, but you know, not to the end, because obviously it's biased and stretchy there. Just make sure it's a little way up, and then you can measure it all the way down, right to the end and then cut it and then stitch it on. All right, so let's go do that now. Then obviously the next step is to get it basted and quilted. Now you'll do the same measurement for the binding. It doesn't change. You will use the same measurement, okay, that you've used for your final border in order to know exactly how much you need. And again, you can do a yard, but I will do a yard and a quarter or a yard and a half, because at this particular stage you will be doing a bias joining and you'll be cutting away your 2.5 inches in order to join that, so you'll be losing strips. Okay, all right, so let's go do that now and I will show you the final product.